Pastor Delapo Lawal needed a phone recharge card. It cost 2,500 naira. The vendor he found was a young woman with a crippled leg. Instead of reaching for his wallet, Lawal had a different idea. He felt confident he could heal her. If he performed a miracle, he figured, he wouldn't need to pay the 2,500 naira fee. He began to speak loudly, commanding the woman to rise up and walk. In a busy marketplace, a man shouting at a crippled vendor draws a crowd fast. People stopped their business and gathered in a tight circle to see if the woman would actually move. She didn't move. Lawal kept trying, but the silence from her legs was deafening. Eventually, someone in the crowd told him to stop embarrassing her. He had to reach into his pocket, pay the 2,500 naira, and walk away in total public shame. When Lawal looked back at that failure, he realized the problem wasn't a lack of faith, but a conflict of interest. He wasn't trying to help a woman, he was trying to save money. The moment a miracle becomes a way to avoid a bill, the spiritual authority behind it vanishes. Lawal later described a realization. He had approached the situation with zero compassion. To him, the woman's healing was just a transaction, a way to get what he wanted without paying the price. This transactional faith treats the divine like a utility. It's the belief that prayer is a coin you drop into a machine to receive a specific benefit, whether that's a job, a car, or a quick fix to a problem. This mindset often trickles down into the home. It leads to a version of Christianity that is performed on Sundays, but lacks any real weight during the week, leaving families without a strong spiritual lead. If the only reason a person seeks a spiritual connection is for personal gain, they lose the very influence they are trying to exercise. You cannot command power you only want to use for yourself. Lawal noticed a recurring pattern through his ministry: firstborn children who seemed to be stuck. Despite their talent, they often faced constant, inexplicable friction in their careers and personal lives. He traces this back to a specific instruction found throughout the Old Testament. In these texts, the firstborn, the one who opens the womb, is not just another member of the family. They are designated as consecrated. In this ancient context, the firstborn was the household priest. Their primary responsibility wasn't secular labor. It was to maintain the family's spiritual altar, offer sacrifices, and ensure the household remained under a specific covering. When the person born into this role ignores it to focus entirely on worldly success, the altar in that home goes cold. The family loses its primary line of spiritual defense because the sentry has left their post. This suggests that for many firstborns, the struggle in the workplace isn't a lack of effort. It's the friction of someone trying to be a worker when they were originally assigned to be a priest. Until they address that spiritual assignment, the secular work continues to feel like an uphill battle.
The modern world values the job blessing above all else, which often distracts from this original priestly design. Career ambition becomes the priority, while the spiritual duty is treated as an afterthought. Lawal admitted that even his ministry was once fueled by this. He wanted to build a church not because he was called to it, but because he was ambitious and wanted the status of a successful pastor. To fix this, he took an 18-month break from ministry entirely. He had to stop doing the work to see if he could exist without the ego of the position. Ambition can easily become a substitute for a genuine calling. When success becomes the goal, it blinds the leader to the actual spiritual needs of the people they are supposed to serve. Many people approach prayer like a workout, loud, mechanical, and focused on the effort involved. But real spiritual depth comes from yielding, which is the opposite of forcing an outcome. Bible teacher Derek Prince used a specific ratio to explain how this works. He believed that the power of a request was determined by the time spent in worship before the request was ever made. In a 10-minute prayer, Prince would spend 9 minutes simply on thanksgiving and worship. That leaves just 1 minute for making requests. The idea is that the glory of the presence does more work than the list of demands. Historical figures like Moses didn't rely on eloquent speech. In fact, Moses was a stammerer. His influence came from staying in the presence for 40 days. He simply stayed there until the power became a part of him. Spiritual authority isn't something you manufacture through a formula. It's a byproduct of how long you are willing to stay in the presence of the divine without asking for anything.
This changes the entire nature of the relationship. Lawal argues that God isn't looking for users, people who only show up when they need a tool for their own success. He is looking for lovers, those who value the relationship more than the benefits it provides. The practical step is simple: 15 minutes a day. Not 15 minutes of complaining or demanding, but 15 minutes of tending to a personal altar through quiet fellowship. The main obstacle to this is the desire for an emotional high. People often stop praying because it doesn't feel sweet or powerful, but that's just the flesh demanding a reward for its effort. Real consecration is measured by the days when you don't feel anything at all, yet you show up anyway. Consistency at the altar is what builds the authority that a single desperate prayer cannot. The failed miracle at the marketplace happened because Lawal was acting as a user. He wanted power to solve a 2,500 narrow problem, but he lacked the compassion that makes that power move. True spiritual authority, the kind that can actually impact a family or change a life, cannot be bought or bartered for. It only comes when the transaction ends and the fellowship begins. Real power belongs to those who are willing to set aside their own ambition and simply remain in the presence.